At first glance, the sperm whale appears to be a poorly designed creature. A head that takes up to a third of the total body length, a relatively small lower jaw, a massive torpedo-shaped body, and a tiny dorsal fin for its size. However, behind this disproportionate silhouette hides one of the most efficient and specialized predators that have ever existed in the ocean. Male sperm whales can exceed 18 meters in length and 50 tons in weight, making them the largest toothed predator on the planet, surpassing any known shark or terrestrial carnivore. Their dominion is not on the surface, but in a world to which sunlight barely reaches. In a single day, a sperm whale can perform dozens of deep dives to reach the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones of the ocean, commonly between 300 and 1,000 meters deep, and sometimes beyond 1,500 or 2,000 meters. In these layers, the water pressure is enough to crush steel structures not designed for such an environment, and the temperature drops drastically. Yet for the sperm whale, this environment is its standard hunting habitat. The key to this extreme lifestyle lies in its physiology. During a dive, the sperm whale drastically reduces its heart rate and redistributes blood flow to vital organs such as the brain and heart. Its lungs collapse in a controlled manner at great depths, preventing compression damage and minimizing dissolved nitrogen, reducing the risk of embolisms upon ascent. Its muscles store large amounts of oxygen thanks to extraordinary concentrations of myoglobin, which allows it to remain without breathing for 45 to 90 minutes, enough time to descend, search for prey, and return to the surface. In this environment of almost total darkness, sight plays a secondary role. The sperm whale's main tool for exploring, hunting, and communicating is sound. The animal emits extremely powerful clicks that travel through the water, bounce off objects and organisms, and return as echoes that its auditory system and brain interpret in 3 dimensions. These signals can reach levels close to 230 decibels, making the sperm whale the loudest known animal. A jet taking off nearby reaches around 150 decibels. In water, pulses of 180 to 200 decibels are already potentially lethal at close range. The power of these clicks is such that at least one case has been documented of an internal injury to a diver trapped between 2 males emitting high-intensity sounds. The volume of acoustic information that the sperm whale generates and processes contrasts with another remarkable fact. It has the largest brain mass in the animal kingdom. In adults, it can weigh around 7.8 kilograms on average and reach up to about 9 kilograms in the largest specimens, roughly 5 times the weight of a human brain. No other living animal, not even the elephant or the orca, surpasses the sperm whale in absolute brain mass. However, a large brain does not automatically imply superior intellect. Neurobiologists use indicators such as the encephalization quotient, which relates brain size to body size. By this measure, the sperm whale does not rank among the top. Its value is lower than that of many dolphins and lower than that of the great primates. Still, its brain architecture shows extraordinary adaptations for auditory processing. Regions associated with handling acoustic information are highly developed, while the olfactory system, irrelevant for this species in the marine environment, is reduced. The social life of the sperm whale also defies simple ideas about large predators. Females and calves form stable groups, organized into family units that can last for years, sharing feeding areas and providing mutual protection against threats such as orcas. Young males usually leave these groups as they grow and move to higher latitudes, where they exploit rich resources of deep-water squid. In both cases, sound is the invisible glue that maintains group cohesion. Clicks allow individuals to locate their conspecifics and coordinate movements in an environment where visibility is almost nil. On the surface, the sperm whale presents a very different picture. After a deep dive, the animal reappears, exhales a characteristic jet of air and vapor, and remains for several minutes breathing regularly. During these intervals, It makes physiological adjustments before the next dive, balancing gases, replenishing oxygen, and perhaps planning the next descent to the hunting zone. At these times, some of the most striking behaviors from a human perspective also occur, such as the way they sleep. Observations of sperm whale groups have shown that they can remain motionless, in an almost vertical position, with their bodies oriented upwards and barely floating like dark columns suspended in the water. These brief naps, which represent a minimal fraction of their day, allow the animal to rest without completely relinquishing control over breathing and the immediate environment. Inside the sperm whale's head, the liquid gold that almost destroyed it. To understand why humans pursued the sperm whale across all the oceans, one must open its head, literally. That enormous frontal block, which seems like a design error, is almost entirely occupied by two structures, the so-called case, or spermaceti organ, and the junk, a mass of fatty and fibrous tissue located underneath. Both form a unique acoustic and buoyancy complex among mammals, filled with a waxy clear substance, spermaceti. It is a mixture of waxes and highly stable liquid oils that, at room temperature, can appear as a yellowish liquid or as a whitish wax, odorless and tasteless. This thermal and chemical stability, combined with its ability to remain fluid at low temperatures and resist high temperatures without degrading, made it an ideal industrial resource long before the petroleum era. It was used to produce fine oils, lubricants, and a wax which, when bleached, produced clean, constant, smoke-free candles. During the 18th century and much of the 19th, a spermaceti candle was literally the standard by which light intensity was measured in photometry. Within the sperm whale's body, the spermaceti organ and the junk serve functions that are still debated today. One of the most influential hypotheses suggests that the animal can vary the temperature of this wax mass through blood flow. Cooling it increases its density, which could favor sinking. Heating it makes it less dense, which could aid buoyancy when ascending. Another line of research emphasizes primarily its acoustic role. Spermaceti and the surrounding tissue layers act as a system of lenses and reflectors that focus and direct ultrasonic clicks, amplifying the power of the sperm whale's sonar and refining its ability to locate prey in darkness. These two functions are not mutually exclusive and likely coexist. At the height of sperm whale hunting, ports such as New Bedford or Nantucket in the United States became nerve centers of a global industry. Whaling ships would depart for years to the South Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, or the Pacific in search of pods, following routes based on empirical experience, observation, and sometimes sheer luck. Spermaceti oil lit cities and factories, lubricated precision machinery, clocks, weapons, and later high-demand industrial components. By the mid-19th century, before the popularization of kerosene and other petroleum derivatives, the sperm whale was, in energy terms, a strategic resource. This demand was also reflected in culture. The sperm whale became the great antagonist of whaling literature, embodied in works such as Moby Dick, where the hunt for the white whale serves as a metaphor for human obsession, but also as a meticulous portrait of the sector's techniques and economy. Behind that epic, however, was the cold reality of numbers. Each killed animal provided tons of high-value oil and wax, and the pressure on populations accumulated decade after decade. By the late 19th century, the traditional whaling industry began to decline, but not due to ecological concern, rather due to pure technological competition. Large-scale petroleum extraction and the production of cheaper kerosene and mineral lubricants began to displace whale oil from the market. The turning point came in the 20th century, when the development of marine biology and increasing environmental awareness came into direct conflict with the economic logic of whales as resources. International organizations played a key role in this paradigm shift. After World War II, the International Whaling Commission was established, with the formal aim of regulating hunting and preventing population collapse. In practice, for decades, the quotas set were too high or were ignored. But they laid the groundwork for something that would have been unthinkable a century earlier: the idea of banning commercial hunting of certain whale species. At the same time, the conservation status of the sperm whale began to be assessed within frameworks like the IUCN Red List, which recognizes that although the global population shows some signs of recovery since the end of large-scale commercial hunting, several subpopulations still have uncertain or negative trends. The major shift came with the international moratorium on commercial whaling, approved in the 1980s, which effectively closed the spermaceti and sperm whale oil markets. The economic value of this liquid gold collapsed, replaced by synthetic lubricants and vegetable oils, such as jojoba, capable of performing similar functions without killing 50-ton animals. Since then, the trade in products derived from sperm whales has been banned in most countries, and any attempt to sell remaining oil or wax is legally prosecuted. A 9-kilogram brain to see with sound. If spermaceti is the physical engine of the sperm whale's sonar, its brain is the processing center that converts pressure pulses into a usable map of the world. In absolute terms, no other animal has a larger brain. In adult males, it averages around 8 kilograms and can exceed 9 kilograms in older specimens, about 5 or 6 times larger than the human brain. This extra mass is not distributed evenly. The architecture reflects a very particular design, with oversized auditory regions and a minimized olfactory system, consistent with a life based almost entirely on sound. Unlike a terrestrial predator, which combines vision, smell, and hearing to locate prey, the sperm whale operates in an environment where light disappears within the first few hundred meters, and odors do not carry the same way as in air. Sound, on the other hand, travels faster and farther in water. The sperm whale has pushed this physical advantage to the extreme. It generates broadband clicks that can reach levels of up to 230 decibels, making it the loudest animal on the planet. These pulses, concentrated in a highly directional beam, bounce off giant squids, fish, other sperm whales, and even the seafloor, returning as subtly modified echoes. The mechanism for producing these sounds begins in a tiny part of its anatomy, a pair of structures called phonic lips, or monkey lips, located near the blowhole. By forcing air through them, the whale generates a vibration that becomes a click. This click is not emitted directly into the water. It first passes through the spermaceti organ, reflects off air sacs, travels through the junk, and is shaped by layers of fat and tissue as if passing through a system of lenses and reflectors. The end result is a narrow, extremely powerful acoustic beam aimed forward. Once the pulse is emitted, processing comes into play. The sperm whale's inner ear is adapted to frequencies very different from those dominating human communication. While the human range concentrates between 1 and 4 kilohertz, sperm whale clicks occupy much higher frequencies, with most energy around 10 to 30 kilohertz, ideal for detecting fine details in distant objects. The echoes return after traveling hundreds or thousands of meters and are primarily received through the lower jaw, filled with acoustically conductive fat that channels the vibration to the middle ear bones. The brain, with its hypertrophied auditory regions, integrates millisecond differences in echo arrival to reconstruct distances, sizes, and densities of objects. The most common pattern of these sounds in a hunting context is known as usual clicks, regular space sequences that sweep the environment like a radar sweep. As the sperm whale approaches prey, the pattern changes. The interval between clicks shortens to form what researchers call creaks, rapid bursts similar to the noise of a rusty hinge. This change indicates that the animal has shifted from searching to targeting and capturing, adjusting the sonar resolution in real time. In the bathypelagic depths, this ability marks the difference between finding food or wasting oxygen. Sperm whales feed largely on deep-sea squids, including giant and colossal squids, though most prey are medium-sized. These invertebrates have also evolved to live in darkness. Many have enormous eyes and bioluminescent photophores. But the advantage of light is limited against a predator that does not need to see them to know exactly where they are. The sperm whale can detect a squid from tens of meters away, estimate its relative position, and adjust its hunting trajectory, guided by a cascade of echoes. The fact that clicks are so intense has led to speculation about whether the sperm whale could physically stun prey with sound. The data is tempting, pulses approaching or exceeding 220 to 230 decibels, in a medium where, at short range, such energy can damage soft tissues. Some divers have reported sensations of pressure or extreme discomfort after close encounters with clicking animals. However, direct evidence of intentional acoustic stunning of prey remains limited. Most specialists believe that although these levels may have physiological effects, the primary function of clicks is sensory and communicative, not as a shock weapon. The sperm whale's brain not only processes echoes individually, but does so integrating social context. A submerged individual is rarely completely alone. Other members of its social unit may be hundreds of meters away, communicating through click patterns different from those used for hunting. While the same anatomical hardware produces all the sounds, the neural software that distinguishes between echolocation and social signals must be able to discriminate subtle nuances in rhythm, interval, and click structure. Comparative neuroanatomy studies suggest that odontocete cetaceans, like the sperm whale, have well-developed areas associated with social cognition, although their organization is not directly comparable to that of primates. Another element that reveals how much its brain is conditioned by the environment is the way it sleeps. Research using suction tags has shown that sperm whales perform passive drift dives. They drift along the water column in an almost vertical position in loose groups for short periods of about 10 to 15 minutes. These episodes represent only a small percentage of the day, around 7%, suggesting that the sperm whale is one of the mammals that spends the least time sleeping. In captive odontocetes, unihemispheric sleep has also been documented. While one half of the brain shows rest patterns, the other remains active to control conscious breathing and basic vigilance. Something similar is likely to occur in sperm whales, although direct confirmation in wild animals is difficult. The image of these colossal bodies suspended like columns beneath the surface suggests a sophisticated commitment to sleep the minimum necessary, without fully disconnecting from an environment where a single distraction can mean losing orientation or exposing oneself to attack. Overall, the combination of a gigantic brain, a hyper-developed auditory system, and an extremely powerful sonar creates a form of perception very different from that of humans. Where we would see absolute darkness, the sperm whale sees textures, volumes, and movements through the echo of its own sounds. Where we hear a simple click, it receives a dense information package about the size, distance, and nature of its surroundings. Codas, patterns, clans, and the beginning of a possible language. When a sperm whale dives into the depths to hunt, its clicks function like an acoustic flashlight. Regular sound sweeps that return the shape of the environment. But when several sperm whales gather near the surface, those same clicks take on a different organization. They group into short, repeated sequences with characteristic intervals and accents. These are called codas, click patterns emitted in groups of 2 to 10 pulses, with rhythms that seem to function more as a social signature than as an echolocation tool. Codas are not used to scan the environment. Unlike common clicks and hunting creaks, which occur in long bursts at great depth, codas are typically exchanged when the animals are relatively close to each other in shallow water or at the surface. Individuals produce them in contexts of gathering, socializing, and coordinating group activities. Their structure is defined more by temporal pattern than by intensity. What matters is not how loud the click is, but the interval between clicks and the sequence they form. The first systematic studies on codas showed that they are not random sequences. Recurring types were identified, such as evenly timed codas and codas with marked accents. These types can be labeled according to the number of clicks and the pause pattern, allowing comparison between groups and regions. Over time, the catalog of recognized codas has expanded to dozens of variants, some very common and others extraordinarily rare. The distribution of these patterns is not homogeneous. One of the most significant findings is that different populations of sperm whales, even when sharing geographic areas, use partially distinct coda repertoires. This led to the concept of acoustic clans, groups of sperm whales defined not only by genetics or space, but by the set of codas they typically use. A clan may share a characteristic coda dialect, with certain sequences common within the group and practically absent in others. These acoustic clans overlap in the ocean. In the same region, there can be family units belonging to different clans, exploiting similar resources but maintaining distinct coda repertoires. Long-term studies in the Pacific have shown that sperm whales tend to associate preferentially with others who share their coda repertoire, suggesting that these differences are not mere local variations, but social identity markers, comparable to cultural dialects. Another key feature is that codas appear to be, at least in part, learned. Calves are born into groups where they continuously hear the codas of adult females and older juveniles. Over time, they incorporate the clan's own patterns, similarly to how humans acquire the language of their community. The transmission of codas across generations and the persistence of specific repertoires reinforce the idea that this is a cultural system, not merely a genetic one. Functionally, several hypotheses have been proposed about what codas say. One possibility is that they serve as group identifiers, a way to announce I belong to this clan, I am part of this social unit. Another is that they act as coordination signals, maintaining acoustic contact when whales are visually misaligned, but within communication range. Codas have also been observed in gathering contexts following deep dives, suggesting a role in reinforcing cohesion and synchronizing activities. However, the precise meaning of each individual coda remains unknown. So far, most scientific work has focused on describing the repertoires and statistical rules, which patterns appear together, how frequently, in what contexts, and how they vary between clans and regions. From a linguistic perspective, this is equivalent to having identified recurring phonemes and syllables, grouping basic words by their sound form, but without yet understanding their semantics. In the last decade, efforts to decipher these structures have made a qualitative leap thanks to the use of artificial intelligence tools and large-scale data analysis. International projects have deployed networks of hydrophones, drones, suction cup tags with recorders and inertial sensors, and machine learning algorithms to automatically record and classify millions of clicks and codas. The idea is to search for patterns that escape human inspection, regularities in duration, sequence and co-occurrence of codas with certain behaviors. One approach treats coda sequences as chains of symbols, similar to texts written in an unknown language. Statistical models and neural networks are used to evaluate whether these chains show properties that in humans are associated with complex languages. For example, long-range dependencies, hierarchical structures, non-random combinations reminiscent of rudimentary syntax. If codas behaved as a simple repertoire of isolated calls, the resulting structure would resemble a limited signaling system. If they show flexible and systematic combinations, it could point to something closer to a proto-language. Another important aspect is the relationship between codas and context. By combining acoustic recordings with position, depth, and behavior data, certain types of codas can be associated with specific situations. If a particular pattern appears with high probability in a repeated context, it reinforces the hypothesis that that coda serves a specific communicative function, even if its exact translation is unknown. So far, the results suggest that sperm whales manage a more flexible coda system than previously thought. Some patterns seem universal in the species, while others are exclusive to certain clans. There is individual variation, but it is framed within group rules. And most importantly, the temporal structure of codas and their distribution in specific contexts show regularities that in miniature resemble the properties of human languages at their most basic levels. Real language or just a complex code of clicks? After describing codas, acoustic dialects, and cultural transmission, the question is inevitable. Are we dealing with a true language or with a sophisticated but limited signaling system? To approach an answer, several research teams have begun treating sperm whale clicks as linguistic data. The cetacean project, or Cetacean Translation Initiative, brings together marine biologists, engineers, linguists, and artificial intelligence specialists with an explicit goal: to record, classify, and analyze sperm whale communication over many years in places like Dominica, using buoys, drones, suction tags, and hydrophone networks to capture audio along with behavioral and contextual information. The approach combines enormous acoustic databases with machine learning models similar to those used to recognize human speech or generate music. These tools can detect regularities that escape the human ear, frequency variations, microtempos, accents on specific clicks, and recurring pattern combinations. In 2024, a study by researchers associated with CET1 showed that codas exhibit a combinatorial structure. Features such as rhythm and tempo combine with subtle nuances to generate a wide inventory of distinguishable coda types, something analogous to a phonetic alphabet constructed with clicks. More recently, studies supported by CET1 and universities such as MIT and UC Berkeley have taken a further step. By analyzing the internal spectrum of clicks with AI models, they have identified vowel-like patterns, that is, internal variations comparable to components of human vowels. The idea is not that whales produce A, E, or O like we do, but that within an apparently uniform click, there exist acoustic substructures that combine systematically, suggesting a level of phonetic organization richer than previously believed. At the same time, these patterns are not randomly distributed in behavior. CET1 and other groups are documenting how certain types of codas appear in specific social contexts: family unit gatherings, dive coordination, interaction between acoustic clans, or care of calves. Statistical models show that the likelihood of a coda type appearing increases or decreases depending on the situation, indicating that they carry informational, not just emotional value. From the perspective of language science, speaking of language in a broad sense usually requires several features: a set of minimal units, phonemes or equivalents, combinations that form syllables or recognizable signals, productive rules for joining signals into sequences, and above all, the ability to refer to things, events, or abstract relationships. In the case of sperm whales, the strongest evidence so far focuses on the first two layers. There is a repertoire of distinguishable units and combinatorial rules that generate structured variation. Recent work describing a coda alphabet based on rhythm, tempo, and ornamentation reinforces the idea that the system is not merely a collection of loose calls, but a code with rudimentary syntax. What is still unclear is the semantic scope of this code. Some indications suggest that certain codas could function as individual identifiers, similar to proper names or as group tags. Other patterns seem consistently associated with activity states, such as the beginning or end of a group dive. However, demonstrating reference in the strong sense is extremely difficult in wild animals, especially in a three-dimensional opaque environment like the ocean. At the same time, there are researchers who urge caution. They point out that it is easy to project human categories onto animal communication systems that may operate under different principles. They remind us that many birds and other cetaceans also show vocal learning, dialects, and complex repertoires without necessarily constituting languages in the human sense. The media fascination with the idea of translating sperm whales can lead to exaggerations that later damage scientific credibility if results do not meet expectations. While the intellectual debate continues, the species situation remains shaped by recent history. After centuries of exploitation, the global sperm whale population is estimated today at around 850,000 individuals, compared to about 2 million before the start of the large-scale hunt in the 18th century, representing a reduction of roughly 57%. The commercial moratorium of the International Whaling Commission halted large-scale catches in the 1980s, But trend analyses show that many populations have still not recovered historical levels, partly due to current threats such as ship collisions, acoustic pollution, entanglement in fishing gear, and changes in prey availability linked to climate.